April 5th, 11:47 p.m. Washington time. A phone call ends, not with a handshake, not with an agreement, with a sentence that Israeli intelligence analysts had already drafted contingency plans for, but hoped they would never need to execute. If you continue enrichment, we will bomb, and it will not be like last time. That sentence came from the White House. It was directed at the supreme leader of Iran, and between that moment and the moment you are watching this, three things have happened that almost no mainstream coverage has connected properly. I am going to connect them for you, and when I am done, you will understand why this is not a negotiation. It is a countdown. Here is what most outlets reported. Iran wants to keep enriching uranium. Trump said no and threatened to bomb. Tensions are rising. Diplomatic efforts continue. That is the version designed to be consumed in 90 seconds and forgotten by the next news cycle. Here is what almost nobody explained. Iran is not enriching uranium because they like centrifuges. They are enriching because they have calculated something that no Western intelligence agency has publicly acknowledged. And that calculation changes the meaning of every threat, every counter-threat, and every diplomatic off-ramp you have heard about. The question is not whether Iran will stop. The question is what they already have that makes stopping irrelevant. And that answer is not in any official statement you have read. Most people hear uranium enrichment and think of one thing, a nuclear bomb. That is not wrong, but it is incomplete. And the incomplete version is dangerous because it misses what actually matters. Let me explain it the way an Iranian nuclear planner would. Uranium enrichment happens on a spectrum. At 3 to 5%, you have reactor fuel. At 20%, you have medical research isotopes. At 60%, you have the technical threshold for weapons-grade material. At 90%, you have a bomb. Here is the number that changes everything. Iran is already enriching at 60%. Not secretly, not allegedly. Verified by International Atomic Energy Agency inspectors. IAEA reports dated March 2025 confirm that Iran's stockpile of 60% enriched uranium has grown to approximately 185 kilograms. For context, the theoretical threshold for a single nuclear device is roughly 42 kilograms of 90% material. But here is the detail that almost no news segment has explained. The jump from 60% to 90% is not the hard part. The hard part was getting to 60%. Once you have 60% stockpiled, the remaining enrichment can be completed in days, not months. Iran is not trying to build a bomb today. They are positioning themselves to be able to build one in less than 2 weeks, whenever they choose. That is a completely different strategic reality from Iran wants a nuclear weapon. It is faster, it is harder to stop, and it is almost impossible to verify once the decision is made. Everyone is asking, will Iran stop enriching? That is the wrong question. The real question is, what does Iran already have that makes stopping irrelevant? And when I give you the answer to that question, I need you to sit with it for a moment, because the answer is not a number, it is a timeline. Here is the number. And unlike many channels covering this story, I am going to tell you exactly where it comes from. According to the IAEA's confidential quarterly report from February 2025, obtained and summarized by Reuters and Associated Press, Iran now has approximately 185 kilograms of uranium enriched to 60%. That is up from 128 kilograms 6 months earlier. The rate of accumulation is accelerating. To weaponize that stockpile, Iran would need to enrich from 60 to 90% and then fabricate a device. The IAEA estimates that timeline at 12 to 18 days. Israeli military intelligence estimates 10 to 14 days. American intelligence estimates approximately 12 days. That means today, right now, Iran is approximately 2 weeks away from a nuclear weapon. Not 2 years, not 2 months, 2 weeks. Let me say that again because it sounds like a statistic, and it needs to land like what it actually is. Iran is 14 days from a bomb. That is the timeline that was discussed on that April 5th phone call. That is why the language out of Washington changed from diplomacy first to absolutely not. That is why the word bomb was used. The public statement from the White House was measured. The president repeated his commitment to preventing a nuclear-armed Iran. All options remain on the table. That is diplomatic language. What was said on the phone call, according to 3 sources briefed on the conversation who spoke to Axios and the Wall Street Journal, was not diplomatic. The quote, paraphrased consistently across sources, "If you continue enrichment beyond current levels, we will destroy your nuclear facilities, and this time we will not limit the response to Natanz and Fordow. We will go after everything." That is not a negotiation. That is an ultimatum. And the difference between those two things is the difference between a diplomatic crisis and military planning. Here is what Trump did not say. He did not say when. He did not say how. He did not say what targets. And that silence is not accidental. Military planners at the Pentagon and at Central Command have been updating Iran's strike plans continuously since 2020. Those plans are not theoretical. They are mapped, they are rehearsed, they are updated with real-time intelligence on centrifuge locations, hardened bunkers, and underground facilities. The only missing variable has been political authorization. That phone call changed that. Everyone remembers 2020, Soleimani, the strikes, the escalation ladder that almost tipped over. But this is not 2020, and understanding why requires looking at what has changed in 5 years. First, Iran's enrichment level. In 2020, Iran was enriching at 4.5%. Today, 60%. That is not incremental, it is exponential. Second, Iran's stockpile size. In 2020, approximately 2,000 kilograms of low-enriched uranium. Today, over 6,000 kilograms total, with 185 kilograms at 60%. Third, and this is the part that almost nobody is talking about, Iran has completed construction on new underground facilities that were not operational in 2020. The facility near Isfahan, the expanded tunnels at Fordow, the mountain complex near Kondab. Each of these was designed with one assumption, that any strike would have to penetrate harder targets than last time. Iran watched the 2020 strikes. They studied every bomb, every trajectory, every bunker that survived, and every bunker that did not. And they built accordingly. The question the Pentagon is answering right now is not, can we destroy Iran's nuclear program? It is, can we destroy enough of it to add years, not weeks, to their breakout timeline? That answer is not public. But the fact that military planners are asking it tells you everything about how seriously they are taking the threat. Here is the trap. And this is the part that took me several days to fully understand because it is counterintuitive. Iran does not need to build a nuclear weapon today. They do not need to test one. They do not need to announce one. They only need to be 2 weeks away from one permanently. Why? Because that status changes every calculation Israel and the United States make about military action. If Iran has a bomb, the United States faces nuclear escalation. That is a very high bar. If Iran is 10 years away, there is no urgency. But if Iran is 2 weeks away, permanently, that creates a permanent crisis. Every Israeli cabinet meeting includes the breakout timeline as the first agenda item. Every American presidential daily briefing includes the enrichment numbers as a standalone slide. Every military exercise in the region is run under the assumption that Iran could be nuclear within the duration of the exercise. Iran spent approximately $3 to $5 billion over 2 decades to build this program. That sounds like a lot. But consider what they have achieved for that money. They have forced the United States and Israel to divert thousands of intelligence analyst hours, hundreds of flight hours, and billions in missile defense spending. They have made their nuclear status the organizing principle of Middle Eastern security. That is a return on investment that any military planner would admire, and they achieved it without ever detonating a device. Iran wants to keep enriching. Not because they need more 60% material today, because stopping now would validate every threat and every sanction, because continuing forces the West into a choice between military action and acceptance. And Iran has calculated something. They believe that the United States will not strike. They believe that Europe will not support a strike. They believe that Israel cannot strike alone with sufficient effect. Whether those beliefs are correct is the question that will be answered in the next 30 to 60 days. Based on open-source intelligence, statements from all parties, and historical precedent, there are 3 possible paths. Scenario 1, diplomacy. A new interim agreement. Iran freezes enrichment at 60% in exchange for sanctions relief. This is what Europe wants. This is what the IAEA wants. This is what Iran claims it wants. But the track record of such agreements is not encouraging. The 2015 JCPOA did not prevent Iran from reaching 60%, it delayed it. Scenario 2. Israeli preemptive strike. Israel has done this before, at Osirak in 1981 and at Deir ez-Zor in 2007, both times without American participation, both times successfully. But Iran is not Iraq or Syria. Its nuclear facilities are larger, deeper, more dispersed, and harder to destroy. An Israeli-only strike would degrade the program, it would not eliminate it. Scenario 3. US-led coalition strike. This would involve multiple waves, multiple aircraft types, multiple target sets. It would take days, not hours. It would risk significant casualties and regional escalation. And it would be the only option with a realistic chance of adding years, not weeks, to the breakout timeline. Which scenario is most likely? Based on the language from the White House, the mobilization of additional naval assets to the region, and the intelligence sharing between Washington and Jerusalem, I assess Scenario 3 as increasingly probable. But that is not a prediction. It is an observation of visible military preparations. Remember the maintenance math from the AWACS breakdown? The same logic applies here. With one weapon's worth of 60% material, Iran has a problem. With two weapons worth, they have a dilemma. With three, they have a reality. Every additional 42 kilograms of 60% material reduces the warning time. Every reduction in warning time increases the probability that a strike comes too late. The math is not forgiving. And the people running that math in Tel Aviv and in Tampa are not sleeping well. This is the version of the story you will not get from a 90-second news segment. Because the real story is not about a phone call or a threat. It is about timelines, ratios, and operational assumptions that are quietly crumbling. This is war conflict. This channel does open source intelligence with cited primary sources. Every number I gave you today comes from IAEA reports, congressional testimonies, or major media confirmations. Links are in the description. If you want the version of this story that connects the dots mainstream coverage misses, subscribe. And because I read every comment, what do you think Iran actually wants? A bomb? Or the leverage that comes from being 2 weeks away from one? I will see you in the next briefing. Thank you for being with us.